The international break is well and truly over, and we have the Premier League right back in our sights. Game week 12. In this episode, we are going to give our score predictions for every single fixture in Game week 12 and also discuss some of the mega fixtures ahead of the weekend. We've got to start. I'd argue it's one of the ties of the game weeks. Ipswich versus Man United. It is a Sunday kickoff, and of course, all the news agencies and the media outlets are talking about the debut of Amorim for United. Let's kick things off. Reese, you have been very vocal in your support of Amorim. Phenomenal job at Sporting. Arguably, you wanted him at Arsenal. Do you see him having an instant impact on Man United?
Oh, if it's an instant impact, I think yes. Yeah, I'd say so. I still think it's going to take time to implement his system with the players there. But I expect another new manager bounce for United, this weekend. But it does come in an interesting game because Ipswich have only just got their first win, so they're going to be on a high too. So it's definitely a bit of a tricky one for United. They could go and win 4-0 or they could have a surprise defeat, but it's definitely an interesting one. I think we'll see an improvement from United in terms of what we see on the pitch.
Jamie, what's your thoughts?
See, this one, I feel like it's going to feel like the first day of the season away to a promoted side, because Ipswich are going to be well up for it because, one of the big teams are coming to town. It's one of them games where it can remind you of, I know like it's going a few years back, but when Arsenal went to Brentford. So it's kind of, it's one of them fixtures where it's sort of like, can the crowd get up enough to really help cause an upset? And Ipswich have been scoring goals as well. So it's not like they're not prone to score a goal and actually, boost the crowd even more. I don't know how much of an impact straight away this new manager bounces. Sometimes it does work magically, but sometimes it can fall sort of like, are United actually good enough? Like the players, can they actually, like, why weren't they good enough under Ten Hag? Was it down to him, or is it the players in such, and he needs a summer to bring in his own sort of players to actually field the way he wants to play? But I think the interesting point about this game is, even if United win, there's very little praise that can go to it, because you're effectively still beating the worst or second worst team in the league. So you win, it's okay, we won, got over that. But if you lose, I think Amorim won't really get the blame. It will be the players once again who will take all the sort of blame for that. So that's where I find it quite interesting. I think it's like for the manager, there won't be much praise and there won't be much sort of impact on him for this first game. It's a bit of a free hit, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that on a free hit, because you're right. The fans, bang on saying that if you lose, your fans will blame the players, not him anyway. And if he wins, everyone will be like, "Oh my god, he's the best thing ever." But I think what we've got to look into is as you said, the new manager bounce. We say it all the time, is one of the most powerful, or can be one of the most powerful forces at times. And under Van Nistelrooy, yes, didn't have anything too signature, but he did pretty well, right? 3 wins and a draw. Yes, 2 of those wins were against Leicester and PAOK, I believe. And obviously the draw against Chelsea. So he didn't do much wrong, Van Nistelrooy. So I guess, 3 wins and a draw, you'd argue, is a new manager bounce, given that they're 13th in the table. But I do ultimately think United will come out on top. And I think it will probably be, yes, Ipswich have got their win. It probably will just be this old school new manager bounce. All the players are going to fight for the manager. Potentially a new tactical system coming in with 3-5 at the back, whatever you want to call it. I think that'll be most interesting to see how he lines up in game week 1. But for the scores, I went 2-1 United. I think both teams are very capable of scoring. I think we will see an Ipswich goal and a bit of a rally at some point in the game. But the new manager bounce is, as I said, one of the most powerful weapons in football. So yeah, 2-1 United for me. How'd you boys go?
tough one. I think this could be one of them. Is it going to be a goal fest with? Because let's be honest, Ipswich don't know how to keep the ball out of their own net. But I also think I'm gonna go 2-0 United. Fernandes to get on the score sheet.
God, putting in scorers now as well. That might up the game a bit.
I don't think I'll be going that bold. I think I want an Ipswich win. I really do. But that's just, I enjoy watching United lose. I just don't see it. I see Ipswich giving them a good game. But effectively, I think they'll lose something like 3-1. I'm going to go 3-1 United. Win on that.
All right, let's move on to another big fixture this weekend. We'll go back to Saturday now. Man City versus Spurs. Now, we did have a few thoughts on this in our previous episode for those of you who haven't seen it. Jamie, City, as we said before, 4 in a row losses, unprecedented in the modern era. Is this the game under the lights on a 5:30 kickoff that you turn it around and get your form back?
I'd like to say yes, but we're playing Spurs, and that's a game I don't like. They're a bit of a bogey team for us in terms of I've seen us absolutely batter Spurs and come out losing and come out drawing. I remember the sort of season where we had 40 odd shots over 2 games, scored 2 goals. Spurs had 5 and scored 4 goals. It can happen, and it suits some of the players at Spurs to go with that sort of route. Son, Johnson with a lot of space. Sort of, I think Solanke having a bit of space in front of him to run, I think would help him out as well. My biggest concern about the game is I don't know who's fit. Now, we had, I think it was 12 players who didn't play international football who normally do. That does include Rodri and Bob, who are long-term injuries. So let's call that 9. You've got it all over the pitch. That's centre backs, that's centre mids, wingers. We don't know who's fit, and that's the biggest worry about this game. So I think this is such a difficult one to call because we don't know what City sides can be put out, and that's what worries me about this game. If we were playing, without being disrespectful, a Southampton at home, I know we only beat them 1-0 this season, but if we were playing them, I'd be a bit more like, yeah, we can turn our form around. But because it's Spurs as well, I think it just makes it a bit more harder to predict. And I don't even know if the performance is going to be well, because that's what's been the worrying point for me. You can lose a game, but the performances have been quite poor throughout the 4 losses so far. So I'm hoping it's not 5, but it's not the best game for us to come back to.
Yeah, I think the defence is where the question marks are at the end of the day. And Spurs are a team, we've seen it many times, like to counter, like to break away pretty aggressively. So I do think they're going to cause you some problems here. I really do. They'll want to bounce back as well, of course. As we said for Ipswich, they'll be buzzing off the back of that win. But on the other hand, you'll get Spurs who really want to bounce back and make an impact. And there's no better way to make an impact than go to Etihad and nick a result. So I'm really looking forward to this one, I've got to say. Very difficult to predict. I don't know. I kind of want to stick with what I said last week. I'll let you say your piece, Reece, first before we get into the score predictions. But I do think this is going to be this game will be won and lost with the defences.
Yeah, I mean, as Jamie said, you don't know what team City are going to side, but you also don't know what teams Spurs are going to turn up. You just don't know. Because there's a lot of jeopardy on this game for both coaches. Of course, Pep doesn't want to lose 5 in a row, and Ange doesn't want to put any more pressure on himself. A heavy defeat would definitely do that for him. But as we know, Spurs are more than capable of getting a result. Now, of course, Spurs haven't won at the Etihad in the league since 2016. So of course, a lot, it does sort of make it that it's not as good as a record as we think. But they are a team that are able to just go for it against City. I think they play a lot more fearless, particularly at the Etihad, again, than any other team tends to do. It's definitely going to be won and lost on the defence, as you said. And as we know, Spurs can either be the best performer we've seen, or they could completely collapse. Romero, we don't know how he's going to behave. Van der Ven, you don't know what he's going to do. You don't know if Vicario is going to drop the ball. This is a tough one. I mean, I think Spurs would probably be devastated because they're coming to City at the worst possible time. A team that are angry.
I'd prefer that personally.
No,
I'd rather
don't.
take a team who's lost 4 in a row.
I think momentum swings the other way. I think Spurs would be more happy to have played City a couple of weeks ago. But then also, City are going to want revenge for losing in the cup, regardless of how much they cared about that. So that could add to complacency from Angie's side. I know I'm going on a bit here, so I will close off with my score prediction in a second. I think this is the worst time to play City, but it's also a good time for Spurs because a loss isn't going to affect Angie's job, nor should it. I think this is going to take a late winner from City to, you see that all the time, just to ease that pressure and that relief. I'm going to go 2-1 Man City.
Jamie, what do you reckon?
Interesting. I actually think I do agree with Jordan on if City did batter Spurs, then Ange would start, that pressure would ramp up, because I've seen a few Spurs fans complaining about him. I don't know how serious a lot of them are about it, but I've seen a few at least. And that's sort of starting because they let him off in the first season when he got battered at certain points, because he was sort of playing more exciting football than what Mourinho brought to them, what Conte brought to them. So they were happy with that. But you can't keep doing the same mistakes. Spurs have conceded from set pieces, I think, more than any team in the league. And it's a continuous story. So I do think he could be under pressure. I think this will be an entertaining game. I hope it isn't a tight affair, but I think it will be. I've gone 3-2 City because I don't believe our defence can keep a clean sheet, and I don't think theirs will either. At the Etihad, if this was at Spurs, I'd probably looking at I'll take a draw now kind of scenario. But at home, we need to be winning, especially after the back of sort of 2 defeats in the league at least.
Yeah, I agree with the goals first element. I think I'm going to stick with what I said last week and go with a 2-2 draw. Both teams are going to score. Both teams' defences are shaky, and I think at the minute there is question marks on both sides. So I think, entertaining game, but a 2-2 draw for me. Let's look at another big one. First versus 20th in the league. Southampton versus Liverpool. Liverpool maybe wanting some form of bounce back because they feel like refs are against them potentially after the David Coote drama during the international break. How do you guys, and again, quick plug, we did do an episode a few weeks ago talking about referees and bias. So we were ahead of the curve on that one, and make sure you're subscribed and check that episode out. How do we see this one playing out? Reece, we'll come back to you. Is this going to be a classic first versus 20th in the league?
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? Liverpool looking to continue their title charge. Southampton are looking to just not to be cut further adrift, really. I think a lot of the talking point is, of course, going to be past Cootgate, with the referee's performance being very under scrutiny, which I understand if you think there's going to be bias there. But, people are entitled to their opinions. Let's not forget that. I think this is going to be a game where they're going to overanalyze a referee's decision before we look at the performance. A normal decision he's going to make is going to be looked at and looked at and looked at and looked at. So don't fall into that trap. Just leave it as it is. This is a real tough game, I think, for Liverpool, because they're going to want to show their title credentials. And I think a silly defeat at Southampton is not going to show that. That's not a good look for them. Whereas Southampton, after getting their first win against another Liverpudlian club, lost to Wolves. So they need to be up for this, and they're more than capable of doing that. But I think Liverpool will probably have too much for them in this game as well. It's a tough one. Tough one for both sides, though. We have to admit that, regardless of it being first versus 20th.
I completely disagree. I think this is going to be an easy victory for Liverpool. I don't see Southampton holding them. I think I just don't see what Southampton are going to do to stop Liverpool. I think Liverpool will dominate from the first minute to the 90th. I see a counter-attack, 1 or 2 counter-attacks at most for Southampton. I think they'll get absolutely battered. To be perfectly honest, I just don't see it. And that could be sort of, I don't see, the thing is, it's sort of like the manager's probably under pressure at Southampton, but if he gets battered by Liverpool, I don't think you sack him, because you've just had the international break. So if you're going to do the sacking, you do it then, is how I would sort of see it. So I don't think his job's on the line, but I don't see him having any tools that stops Liverpool from walking this game.
Well, you say his job's not on the line, but what if he loses the next 6? Because I just want to read off Southampton's next 6 fixtures: Liverpool at home, Brighton away, Chelsea at home, Villa away, Spurs at home, Liverpool at home. To be fair, that's the Carabao Cup, but still,
it's a tough one there, because I think they might do a bit of a Burnley and keep hold of the coach. Because as we saw, they go on to get better jobs, right? So they're probably in their best interest to keep him. And also, who else is really available at the moment in time? I think when we say about these games coming up, teams tend to do all right. If anything, it's probably better for them to play them all in this row, because you've got nothing to lose. Yes, it's frustrating they're not changing their style of play, because look, they scrape through the playoffs in the end, let's be honest, after bottling it. But I think Southampton will probably just be happy to be here at this moment in time. So I don't think it's going to affect his job. However, if they're losing by quite a considerable margin, then it might be, goodbye to him.
I was actually going to make the same point about the sort of Burnley, Luton kind of scenarios where they keep the manager throughout the whole Premier League season, because sort of it's more of a, when they go up, it's more, can we actually stay up? Is it a possibility? Probably more than likely we're going to go down. So I'd rather keep the manager for the long-term sort of solution, because he was good enough to get them up. And if you get rid of him, then you're sort of, rolling the dice again with a brand new manager, whether it works, whether it doesn't, or you get a bit of a payout from going to a bigger club. Really, I don't think, he's going to get the sort of Bayern Munich job. To be perfectly honest, it was a bit of a surprise to get relegated by Burnley and company gets the Bayern Munich job. It doesn't always work like that. You don't normally get relegated to get a bigger job, but it could happen in a slight different way in terms of who he could move on to. I think for the long-term project, they keep him, but the games you've read off, Jordan, it's very likely they lose all 6. Probably typically Spurs are beat City at the Etihad and then Southampton are beat them. But, that's just the way football can be at times. But yeah, it's a difficult one, because I think I do agree with Reece, where if he gets battered in these games continuously, you have no real choice. You can't be getting embarrassed every week. To get embarrassed by Liverpool on the weekend, that's a one-off, that's fine. As long as it's like a 4-5-0, it's fine. But to keep on losing by that score, the manager then will shortly have to go. I think I'll kick off with my score prediction, unless you've got something else you want to say, George.
No, I'll say it with my score predictions. Go on.
Yeah, I've gone with a 4-0. Like I say, I see one-way traffic, and it'd be a comfortable win for Liverpool today, on Sunday.
Yeah, from my side, I agree with you, Jamie. It is going to be a first versus 20th scenario. I can't there's just not been any redeeming qualities that I've seen so far from Southampton. Even in the game they won, you know, they I believe they scored in the 85th minute and they almost bottled that. You know, there was in a hair's length of that goal being offside. So, yeah, I just, unfortunately, the only potential factor is maybe Southampton have got less players on international break, could work in their favour. But I went 3-0 Liverpool. I just see it as a battering, to be completely honest.
I'm going to go 1-0 Southampton.
Wow.
As soon as everyone says they're going to get steamrolled, that always happens. They've got nothing to lose. And I think as good as Liverpool are, that home defeat to Forest is still a stickling point for me because it shows that they are vulnerable. So I'm going to go Southampton to nick it. It might be another late goal or they'll just pass around the back if they score early.
I hope you're right, Reece. I hope you're right.
That would be quite entertaining. Right, let's get through some of these fixtures with a bit more speed. Then we will go in chronological order. So the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday is, of course, Leicester versus Chelsea. 15th versus 3rd in terms of league positionings. And the Maresca derby, some might call it. I see us winning this game, to be completely honest. I've gone 3-1. Again, Leicester, I've not been fully sold on Leicester. Other than that kind of Arsenal away game, I've not seen enough of Leicester to really fear them. And I think we're capable of going on and scoring a few goals. So I've gone 3-1 Chelsea.
Snap. I've gone 3-1 as well. I think Leicester will score. They've been actually very good at scoring. I think they've scored in nearly all their games. I think there might be one or maybe two they've not. But yeah, 3-1.
2-0 Chelsea. Yeah, I think you just have a bit too much for Leicester.
Cool. On to Fulham versus Wolves on the Saturday 3 p.m. I'll let you guys kick off on this one. Jamie, will come to you.
I think it'll be an interesting game, actually. I think Fulham have been quite a good side so far this season. So I think there'll be a few goals. I've gone with 2-2. I think Wolves are getting a bit better, starting to score a few more goals. Yeah, so I've gone with a 2-2, sort of quite a good game. And a shame it'll be a 3 o'clock kickoff.
Reece?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think Wolves obviously have it in their locker to do very well. They've got a good squad. They've got a nice, I like their striker. Is it Larson? Is that how you pronounce it? I like him a lot. But of course, yeah, they do concede that them Fulham are decent at home. Yeah, I'll go. I was going to say 0-0 originally, but I'm going to say 1-1.
To be honest, I think Fulham will win. Wolves have been better, but Wolves have been struggling at the end of the day, and Fulham have been impressive at times. So I think I'm going to go 2-1 Fulham in that one. Next fixture, Everton versus Brentford. Again, hard to call this one for me. I kind of changed my mind a couple of times on this. I have stuck with my 2-1 scoreline though, but I've gone 2-1 Brentford. I've been impressed. Brentford are a bit of a weird team this season, blowing hot and cold. It's just one of those fixtures. I just feel like they're going to turn up. I don't know why. So yeah, 2-1 Brentford for me.
Red hot in the first 2 minutes of a game.
Yeah.
You can't get hotter than that. But yeah, so I've gone with a 1-1. It's a difficult one. I don't see Everton conceding a lot of goals. They don't normally, once they sort of have their squad back together, and I think they are starting to now. So I'm going to go over 1-1. I think there still are problems for Everton that stops them getting a win at home to a team they really need to be beating.
I think Everton have improved. I think they're improving. And I do like Brentford, but I think, again, they're just that inconsistent side. They'll go and beat the better side one week and then go and lose when they should probably win. But they're also capable of going here and turning Everton over. I'm going to go Everton. They don't score many goals, really, do they? 1-0, 2-1.
Calvert Lewin certainly doesn't. It's him out your FPL team.
Let's go Everton 1-0. Yeah.
Everton 1-0. All right. Next up, another 3 p.m. and probably the biggest 3 p.m. game. Fourth versus fifth, Arsenal versus Forest. On paper, a couple of months ago, it might have looked an easy fixture for Arsenal, but actually, you look at Forest's form; they've been very, very impressive. Reese, how do you see this one playing out? Tricky fixture for Arteta.
Yeah, tricky fixture against the tricky trees, as they used to be known as, Forest. I mean, I don't care. It's really not going to make a difference on what Arsenal do, so couldn't care less. Forest might be a bit wobbly after losing, at home to Newcastle, which they'd be disappointed with. So they could be a bit shaky. Again, I don't care. It's not going to make a difference. 1-1.
Well, look, if you don't think you're going to win the league, then that means you're in the top four race. And you're currently joint points on them, and it's full first, fifth. Yeah, so you should care for the top four at least.
I mean, we're only a few games in, but I still don't care. It doesn't matter. It's not going to change anything.
I'll be the optimism for Arsenal. I think this is where Forest start to slowly go down the table. Obviously, I know the points difference between third and ninth is a point, but yeah, I think Forest lose. I think it'll be a 2-0 Arsenal win. I don't think it'll be comfortable, but I don't. Yeah, I think Raya will have to make a few good saves because Forest look good on the counter. But I still think they'll keep a clean sheet. So I'm going to go 2-0.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have just tuned in, this is the Lost in Possession podcast, not Arsenal Fan TV. With this game, I do see it as a tricky fixture, as I said. And I think his first goal wins. I witnessed it firsthand when Forest played us. They went 1-0 up, a little bit against the run of play, but they were so hard to break down. Time wasting relentlessly. And so I think if Forest nick the first goal, I think we're going to see a really, really interesting game. But ultimately, I do think Arsenal had the quality to win. So I've gone 2-1 Arsenal. Cool. Let's move on. Next fixture, Villa versus Palace. Now, we just mentioned that 1 point gap. Villa are currently 9th in the table, but 1 point off third position, which is pretty mental. I'll kick this one off. Palace, I mean, arguably the shock of the season to some degree, i.e. how bad they've been after last season. I think it'll be a pretty straightforward win. 2-0 Villa, I think.
I'll say snap again, Jordan. Yeah, 2-0. Palace are just struggling to score. That's their biggest sort of problem. And I just don't see it stopping away to Villa. I think Villa can sometimes, show that, they can beat Bayern Munich's and then lose to, was it Bruges? That's what they can do. But I think if this was at Palace, I would actually back a Palace win. But I think at Villa Park, Villa win. And I think 2-0.
Reece, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough one here because I think Villa are more than capable of performing poorly here. Palace did knock them out the cup this season at Villa Park, so they'll give them that. But the issue with that again is, I know maybe it's a superstitious thing, but you do tend to get it where a team will get revenge when they play each other again in this circumstance. Palace have been poor, and they're more than capable of getting a result here, but Villa are also capable of getting back on track. I think it's actually tougher to call than I think a lot of us realise because they haven't been great, Villa, have they recently? God, my heart is saying Villa to win comfortably, but I'm also think this could be a 2-2. So I'm going to go 2-2.
Interesting. Goal fest. Right, 2 more to get through. So Bournemouth, another 3 p.m. on the Saturday. Bournemouth versus Brighton. Again, I struggled with this one because you've got two teams who are capable of turning up. We've seen also some of their weaknesses at times this season. But I think we're going to see another goals fest, personally. So I've gone 2-2. Both, again, question marks defensively. Both capable of scoring goals. Both arguably got inform attackers. So, yeah, 2-2. What did you guys think of this one?
I thought, this is quite a close one. I've watched both teams beat City quite recently. I've gone with 1-1. I think this is where sort of like this is what happens when teams beat one of the teams at the top. Then this is where they drop points. Sort of it's just in these other games. This is why they're not consistent enough to be title challengers. It's not that they can't beat the top 6 teams. It's the consistency. And I think this is where it's sort of like these games is where they drop points too many times over the season. So yeah, 1-1.
Reece?
Yeah, I agree with Jamie. This is the inconsistent derby, isn't it? Where they're both incapable of beating anybody and then not getting the results where they should. Hence why they do not push up the table where they should be going. Oh, 0-0.
Okay, draws all round. Cool. And last but not least, we go to the Monday night football, Newcastle versus West Ham. I'll kick things off again. West Ham, just underwhelming. Really, really underwhelming. Just like Palace, was really backing them to do something and start the season strong, and it's just not materialised at all. Whereas Newcastle starting to see things come together, I'd say.
Here's the question. We're talking about managers. Could this be Lopetegui's last game?
No, not for me. It would be so naive, I think, of West Ham to get him in this early, give him 12 games and go, no, we got it wrong. Lopetegui feels a bit more of a long-term appointment. Give him time. He's had a few injuries and whatnot. So I can't see him going. But I've gone, I think he'll lose, but I've gone 2-0 Newcastle.
I agree that he won't be sacked if they do lose, because I'm going to make the sort of same point of it's just after the international break. Why are you going to wait for the first game after? I think that's just terrible planning. Sort of unless they've used the whole international break to find someone new, which I don't believe they would have, because I think that'd be stupid. But I think it's a good thing they're playing them on a Monday night. I think it's a Monday night I don't think has the sort of atmosphere that Newcastle will get on a 5:30 on a Saturday, on a Sunday, sort of televised games. The Mondays can be a bit more subdued, and I think that helps West Ham a bit, but I still don't see West Ham winning. I've gone with 2-1 Newcastle, but I think I wouldn't be that surprised if it did end up a draw.
Reece?
Yeah, I'm in that same camp of like these Monday games are often really dull, aren't they? So that's very pulls in West Ham favour. But these teams, when they play, they do score goals. I think it was 3-3 last year, wasn't it? At the or 4-3 or something at St James's Park. But West Ham have been susceptible to some absolute batterings, haven't they, this season? Dear. I'm going to say Newcastle 3-0. 3-0 Newcastle. And I think that could spell the end for Lopetegui already if it's a poor performance. Like 3-0's poor, but if it's you have offer nothing, he could be gone.
All right. Well, there you have it. That is all 10 fixtures discussed and predicted. As always, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. Hit us up in the comments and make sure you're subscribing. As always, though, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.